All right, I wanted to put some dates in our mind because it's going to help us with the end of chapter 10. 608, Jehoiakim became king. 606, Nebuchadnezzar captured Jerusalem, which started our 70 years. And Nebuchadnezzar became king in 605. That does not work. There's a mistake there. How are you going to capture before you're king? Oh, he was a joint king with his dad, I think. I think that's what it was. 604, chapter 2 begins. 602, which is, isn't chapter 2 Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah? Is that right? Or is that chapter 3? Chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, his companions, told him to seek mercy from God. Oh, it's Daniel interpreting the king's dream. That's 604. 602, Jehoiakim rebels. 597, Ezekiel is taken captive. Chapter 3 through 4 is that same time. Chapter 7 to 8 is 555. Chapter 5, 6, 9, 11, 12 are 539. We're not to chapter 10 yet. 536, the first captives return. 536, Daniel chapter 10. So, to help you put this into perspective, and we're going to talk about this more in a moment, how old was Daniel in chapter 1? What'd you say? In his teens. So it has been 70 years that they've been in captivity. So how old is he in chapter 10? 83. That's right. Okay. So that's going to help put into perspective our chapter, since Mark helped us out with even his birth month, right? 83 years old in chapter 10. That's a pretty close guess, actually. So that will help us out as we think about it. Last week we talked about the power of prayer and fasting. Chapter 10, Daniel is praying. And then a man, or one like the children of man, or one with appearance of a man, came to him in a vision. How long had he prayed and fasted? You remember? Beginning of chapter 10 there. 3 weeks. I guess it wasn't last week. We had 2 singing weeks, didn't we? So that gets confusing. Chapter 9, Daniel had read God's word and prayed, and immediately Gabriel comes to him. Chapter 6, Daniel prayed 3 times daily, as was his custom. He was delivered from the lions and from the law, and safely delivered from the lions by God. So we've had a lot of prayer throughout the book. We've had fasting throughout the book. Daniel chapter 2. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah prayed, and Daniel was given the dream's interpretation and the dream to tell King Nebuchadnezzar. So we've seen prayer throughout the whole book, and fasting throughout the whole book. We have seen God answer prayer throughout the whole book. We've also seen when Daniel receives a vision or a prophecy from God, it often affects Daniel. Daniel chapter 7, verse 28. Here is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts were greatly alarmed me, and my color changed, but I kept the matter in my heart. So when he finishes receiving a vision or a prophecy, how did it affect him? His blood drained from his face, right? He was white as a ghost, we might say. Thoughts alarmed me. Color changed. Daniel chapter 8, verse 27, after he receives a vision or a prophecy. And I, Daniel, was overcome and lay sick for some days. But I was appalled by the vision and did not understand it. How did the vision affect him? Made him sick. How long? Some days, multiple days. What's he doing during that time? He's laying, he's scared, he's upset. Astonished, did not understand. Now, I think this is about where we left off. Let me go see where we did leave off. Nope, we were still a paragraph ahead of this, so let's go back in our notes. I think we're about verse 6. And we are, if you're following around in your handouts, if you still have them, we're under point number 2, that he was described like a man. And we read that verse 6, last time. But one of the things that's mentioned about him is that he was described like a man. Now, some will argue that he is described like the Son of Man in Revelation. Revelation chapter 2, I believe it is, where Jesus is walking amongst the churches. Is that 1 and 2? I think it was chapter 2, that he's described almost identical to this. So some people think this is describing Jesus. It could be just an angel. But this angel, spiritual being, appears like a human. Now, can you think of other times that angels have been described like a human in the Bible? When the 3 angels appeared to Abraham and Sarah, Genesis 18, 1 through 5. Then the very next chapter, how did they appear when they appeared to Lot? As a man. Genesis 19, 1 through 5. Jesus is often described in a similar way. Now, we've been talking about visions and prophecies, and before we get to these verses that are on the board, how do humans react when they meet heavenly beings? How does it affect people? Fear. Often fear. Can you think of something else? What about Saul? How did he walk away after he had met Jesus? Blinded. All right. What about Zacharias? How did he react after he had talked to God in the temple? Couldn't speak. So we've got couldn't talk, we've got couldn't speak, we've got fear. All of those things I want you to remember when we go to Daniel chapter 10, because it affects him in the same way. So there's some similarities to Acts chapter 9. There's some similarities to Luke chapter 1. Let me read now the next paragraph. I think we left off about verse 6. So verse 7. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision. Does that remind you of anything? Who does that remind you of? Saul. Yeah. The men who were with me did not see the vision, and they fled to hide themselves. So I was left alone and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. What did it do to him when he saw the vision? It wiped him out, right? It zapped his strength. Now, here's what's different, and that's why I'm leaving this slide up for a while. All of our other visions in the book have done things to him physically, but they all did it when it was over. All of the rest of them, after the vision, he was sick for many days. After the vision, he had no strength. He can't even make it through the vision. He can't make it through the vision. They have to stop the vision. They have to stop the encounter with God to help him, give him back zap him with some more strength. Yeah. Yep. Pause the vision, give him some more strength. And when you hear how they give him strength, it reminds me of another encounter. And my appearance was fearfully changed. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed. That reminded me of when he was a boy, how healthy he looked, how strong and supple his flesh was, fat his flesh was after eating the vegetables. Now he says, I've had this radiant appearance, but now it's changed. How did Moses react when he would meet God on the mountain? He would have to cover his face because his appearance was so bright. Seems like the opposite happens with Daniel here. He goes from a bright, ruddy, probably the word ruddy means red, probably red-faced individual to a white, very white. How did Jesus, when he went on the mountain? He came back bright. And my appearance was fearfully changed. I have a footnote here that could be translated. The Hebrew actually says, my splendor was changed to ruin. So he came back worse. He looked horrible. And we haven't even finished the encounter. And I retained no strength. So he's exhausted. His skin looks horrible. He has nothing left. Then I heard the sound of his words, and as I heard the sound of his words, I fell on my face in deep sleep with my face to the ground. Now it seems like, and there was a time a couple chapters ago that it seemed like afterwards he passed out. He may have fainted, or at least he's so exhausted he can't even go on anymore. And behold, a hand touched me. Now, we're going to see this several times in this chapter, but who does that remind you of? Who did not have strength, and they were given strength through touch? What happened in the Garden of Gethsemane? Jesus had no more strength. An angel comes and ministers to him, and now he has strength again. Also kind of reminds me of after his 40 days in the wilderness. He is so zapped that the angel has to come and strengthen him and set me trembling on my hands and knees. So even though the angel it says hand. I'm going to be careful not to say angel because there are some brethren that believe this is Jesus throughout this passage. The heavenly being, even though it has touched him, he's still weak. Set me on my hands and knees trembling, and he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly loved, understand the words I speak to you, and stand upright, for now I have been sent to you. And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. Then he said to me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard. And I have come because of your words. Okay, do you remember while he was still praying what happened in a previous chapter? During the middle of the prayer, the angel came and answered the prayer. This time, he prayed for how long and fasted? 21 days. So it feels like, compared to the rest of the book, God is slow to answer. He is. That's what this man, and I'm going to say angel at this point, this angel is saying to him. He was slow to answer because he couldn't get there. Something held him up. So let's read what held him up. He said, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. So from the first day, 21 days ago, he was on his way, but he hasn't made it there. Why? The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. So he's been in an altercation with a heavenly being. And right now it just says prince, and you don't have to believe me it's heavenly being yet, but later in the chapter it's going to be more obvious that this is heavenly being. I would say angel on angel fight or argument, or physical or words, we don't know. But who stopped him for 21 days? Why could he not get through? A king of Persia. Okay. All right, let's keep reading. But Michael, one of the chief princes, okay, who's Michael? Archangel. So now that's how we know who these princes are. Who are these princes? They're angels. So there's an angel of Persia that's causing him problems and not allowing him to get to Daniel, and it takes an angel with more authority to step in and stop this disagreement. So who might, and we don't know, this is not a fact, who might this other angel have been, this prince of Persia? The devil or one of his demons, one of his angels, are arguing with him, fighting with him physically or in words, and he can't get through. And it takes an angel with more authority to step in to help him get through. Now, where are we at right now in chapter 10, verse 1? King of Persia. So, there is apparently an evil angel who is Prince of Persia. So, who is in charge of, or hurting Persia from Satan, or from some, it seems like Satan's angel is here harming Persia. Well, where is Daniel? In Persia. And he wants to get to Persia. He can't get through. This angel's not letting him through. And so it takes a greater angel to step in. Now, if you are not excited like I am, I don't know what would make your blood boil. We don't get to see behind the scenes arguments and difficulties with angels very many chapters in the Bible. So he's trying to get there. He's trying to go to Persia, and there's another angel that is stronger or of more authority than him that won't let him in. And it takes another angel that has more authority saying, let him through, or forcing him to let him through. And so he finally gets there. He spent 21 days trying to get through. That's right, because if it was Jesus, there would be no argument. If Jesus wanted to come through, there is not going to be an angel that could stop him. So that kind of proves it right there, doesn't it? Now, do I know how good or evil angels are specifically working in kingdoms today? No, I don't. But this is interesting to see that there are angels who are hurting nations, and there are angels who are trying to come in, and they're not as strong as other angels, and then there's an archangel that's able to come in and force their way in. Do you ever feel like God is slow to answer prayers? We just found out behind the scenes why Daniel had God slow to answer prayers. It's because for 21 days he had sent his man, and his angel was stopped by a different angel, and they are fighting for him to be able to get to Persia. And he can't get in until Michael comes and forces it. So I don't know how God works today with his angels in kingdoms and in nations and in our lives specifically, but there's proof right there that God might be answering your prayer, and there's a whole battle going on just to try to get to you to answer your prayer. Put on the whole armor of God. There are battles going on today. Yeah. I was left there with the king of Persia. I was left there with the kings of Persia and came to make you understand what is happening to your people in the latter days, for the vision is for the days yet to come. When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face towards the ground and was mute. This vision has affected him over and over and over throughout it. And behold, one in the likeness of the children... Oh, this is the one. This one right here, verse 16, could be this angel again. It could be This is what could be a reference to Jesus. One in the likeness of the children of men touched my lips, and I opened my mouth and spoke. I said to him who stood before me, O my Lord, by reason of the vision, pains have come upon me, and I retain no strength. How can my Lord's servant talk with my Lord? For now no strength remains in me, and no breath is left in me. Again, one having the appearance of a man touched me and strengthened me. How many times now has he already had to be strengthened during this vision? That's the third time. Third time they've had to help him to make it through this vision. And he said to me, O man greatly loved, fear not. Peace be with you. Be strong and of good courage. And he spoke to me, and I was strengthened, and said, Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. Then he said, Do you know why I've come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. So this heavenly being, or that same angel we were just talking about a minute ago, has got to go back to his battle. He came here to give him the message, and he's got to go right back to fighting again. Then he said to me, When I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come out. Okay, in this chapter, what have the princes been so far? They've all been angels. So there is apparently an angel that is doing something bad to Persia, and there's another angel of Greece that I would assume is also wicked, but it could be a good angel. So it's as if there are angels over each nation. But we're not talking about good ones in this chapter. It's like Satan has positioned angels throughout the world to cause problems in different nations. And so God is sending angels to go fight those angels. So I've got to go back and fight the angel of Persia. When I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come out. But I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. There is none who contends by my side against these. There you go. So that's how you know it's wicked. None in my side except who contends against, plural, these. So he's fighting against this angel that's trying to hurt Persia, and he's fighting against this angel that's trying to hurt Greece. Who's helping him? Except Michael, your prince. And so him and Michael are doing a lot of fighting, trying to help nations that Satan's trying to hurt, that wicked angels are trying to hurt. How does this affect him? He's dumb. He's sorrowful. He's strengthless. He's breathless. Now, I don't have the full why. I'm going to give you one reason why it could be. But what do you think? Why do you think this vision, and we're never given a word of this vision. We're not, God didn't want us to have it. He just wants to know how hard it was for Daniel to get it. Why do you think this vision affected Daniel so much worse than all the other chapters we've looked at? He's been fasting for 21 days. Yeah, that's a good point. He was probably worn way down, and a lot of times the visions were given to him while he was still praying, immediately, those type of things. All right, any other thoughts? His age. Yeah. That's why I wanted to point that out at the beginning, because according to Mark's guess, he's 83 years old, which is a pretty good guess. Let's look at Daniel now. I started out with just the book, but now I want you to think about him. He is in his 80s by the time we get to this chapter. And so what used to make him sick for a few days, I said 3, but a few days, what used to would wear him out, now he can't even make it through the visions. They're so hard on his body. And it could be, and here's my third theory, and all 3 could actually be true. Maybe this vision was that bad. What he was seeing was so hard to contemplate that nobody wants to see things happening to God's people or God's nation like he's seeing. We don't know what the vision was, but there's 3 possibilities. 1, long time fasting. 2, old age. 3, the vision itself. Was that hard? And it could be a combination of all 3. We've covered a lot of fun stuff in this chapter. Any questions? And I know it's a lot like Job chapter 1. We're getting to see behind the scenes. It's not our normal type of chapter in the Bible. Any questions or just thoughts on it? What do you think, Chance?
I've never heard that before, so I was like, man, there's a lot of stuff in there.
There is a lot of stuff in there.
And I had never heard anything about like the behind the scenes of like angels and stuff. Like, wow, that's pretty crazy.
And to think we're not even given in the vision. We're never even told the vision. Just the behind the scenes of what all is going on during. Yeah. The effects it had on Daniel. All right, now we're coming into, and actually chapter 10 was the start of that, depending on how you look at it. I'm dividing chapter 11 and 12 from 10 because of the timeline. And that's what I showed you at the beginning of tonight's PowerPoint. 11 and 12 are not at the same time as 10. Most people lump them together. But we are coming into the hardest part of the book, according to most anyone you would ask. I was telling a long version of the story that I'll tell you real briefly that I was telling Jim before class. When I took this in Masters, I wanted so bad to know what 10, 11, and 12 were about, and the professor just kept ignoring our questions and told us we'll get there. And the last day, halfway through the day of our 5-day course, he finally got there and then just sped through it. And he gave us 4 choices and said, choose your favorite. I'm going to give you 2 choices, and I'm going to clearly show you which one's my favorite. So I'm going to give you what I really believe now, and I could be wrong. But I'm going to show you the historical approach to chapter 11 and 12. And by that I mean, verse by verse, these things prophesied, fulfilled in history. Bryce, will you bring up that PowerPoint, please? Our chapter 12 memory verse is verse 1, and if you don't come away with any, or chapter 11 and 12, we're combining. Memory verse is verse 1 of chapter 12. If you don't come away with anything else from these 2 chapters, I want you to know this verse. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. Doesn't that remind you of Revelation? All this difficult stuff's going to happen in chapter 11, a lot more difficult stuff, more eternal sounding stuff in chapter 12. But if we're written in the book, we're delivered. If you get nothing else, understand that. It's a chapter, a couple chapters of hope for the faithful. All right, Daniel chapter 11 and 12. The student should understand how God knows nations. The student should understand how God deals with his nation, nations compared to his nation being Israel in the Old Testament. And the student should gain hope, and the student should learn more trust in God. Let's begin at chapter 11, verse 1. And I want to put it into chronology here. Chapter 11, verse 1, As for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. Chapter 10, verse 1 was the 3rd year of Cyrus the Persian. Okay, help me with this word. The blank and blank. How do we name these 2 kingdoms? Which one always comes first? The blank and blank. The Medes and Persians. So without any other knowledge, which chapter came first? Chapter 11 or chapter 10? Chapter 11. So that right there alone is the reason I'm not going to lump the 2 chapters together. Some people want to lump them together because they're hoping that chapter 11 is that vision that we talked about in chapter 10. That would mean that God gives them a vision 2 years in the past, or 3 years in the past. So it did not happen in chronological order. Chapter 11 and 12 are before chapter 10 chronologically. So That's why we're studying 11 and 12 as a unit, not with 10. What is Daniel doing in chapter 11, verse 1? As for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. What is he doing? He's talking to the king of the Medes. He is trying to strengthen the king of the Medes. He's giving a prophecy to help the king of the Medes. He's strengthening him. And then we're going to go through the whole chapter of this prophecy to help the king of the Medes. All right, let's think about all the kingdoms we've been remembering. What was the first? Babylonia. What was the second one? Medo-Persia. Okay. Directly after the Medes comes Persia, right? Verse 2, he's going to give a prophecy about Persia. What comes after Persia? Medo-Persia. Greece, verse 3 and 4 about Greece. And so you see where we're going, okay? Verse 2, the Persian Empire. Now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and a 4th will be far richer than all of them. And when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. Now, I wrote in your notes the commentary I'm using because chapter 11, I'm going to be just reading straight from Magano's commentary. Page 289 is where I'm going to start off. And we'll go verse by verse. But there's only one verse under the first point. That's verse 2. So let's look at verse 2. The reason I'm going from this is because he studied the history. I've not studied all this history of Greece and Persia and all of that, but it matches up exactly with the verses. So verse 2, we just read it now. Listen. There were 3 kings. The first was Cambyses. Then there was an impostor king called Gamata who passed himself off as Cyrus's younger son, Smerdis. So first we had King Cambyses. Then we had a fake king that pretended like he was the son of the king and made himself king, and people didn't catch on very quickly. After that was Darius the First. The 4th king, so notice verse 2, there shall be 4 kings. The 4th king was Xerxes, who without any cause invaded areas controlled by the Greeks. Xerxes is called different names in the Bible at different points in time, but we'll go with Xerxes for now. So, verse 2. Now we're already switching to the Greeks by verse 3, because verse 2 ended with that he stirred up the kingdom of the Greeks. Now verse 3 and 4, the Greeks. Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion and do as he wills. And as soon as he has arisen, let's just pause there. Who's the mighty king that rises up with the Greeks? He was the little horn a few chapters ago. Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great, what happened when he died? Did his son become king? No. His 4 generals. And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken. Why? Because it's not passed to one son, it's passed to 4 generals, with divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. Whew, God knows what he's talking about, doesn't he? Literally divided into 4 sections, his kingdom. But not so to his posterity. It's not passed to his son. Nor according to the authority with which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others besides these. In other words, that last part says, not with the authority of which he ruled, is one, let's say, Great Britain. Remember when Great Britain was covering the whole earth, how powerful it was? Alexander the Great, when he had one kingdom, it was extremely powerful. But when you take a kingdom and you divide it, it's not as strong as it was united. Verse 5, then the king of the... Oh no, we were supposed to only cover 3 and 4 under that point. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. Xerxes is the same one as Esther, which, what did it say there about him at the end of that verse? Has become strong through his riches. Do you remember what was happening when the queen before Esther, Vashti, what happened with her? He wanted to display her. She said, I'm not going in there immodest. But what had happened that led up to him asking to display her? A feast. How big of a feast? It tells us it was months. He was extremely wealthy. You imagine feeding people, well, a wedding feast back then would be 7 days. You imagine feeding people for 7 days straight. Now imagine months and months and months. I think the book of Esther calls it 6 months, if I remember right. What did verse 2 prophesy about him? That he would have great riches. So that Xerxes that was prophesied in verse 2 having great riches is the Xerxes that at the beginning of Esther has months-long party. Good question. 180 days. So 6-month-long party, feeding people and drinking for 6 months straight. So the extreme wealth that was prophesied in verse 2. Yes. What does it say in your... Ahasuerus? Yeah. So he goes by 2 different names in different histories even today. Some call him Ahasuerus, some call him Xerxes. That's why it's hard to tell. It's hard to decide which one to call him. So Alexander the Great had 4 generals. Here's the ones that you're going to recognize. Seleucus, he's going to be very important, and Ptolemy. But there are 4 generals that take over his nation. That gets us through verse 4. Verse 5 starts talking about the south versus the north. This could be confusing if you don't know where we're at on our timeline. What nation are we under right now? Greece. We haven't switched nations. So when we're talking about the south versus the north, we're not talking about 2 different nations. If you read the rest of the chapter and you think we're talking about 2 nations fighting, it gets very confusing. But when you realize that one nation is having civil wars, that's what we're talking about. So we're having part of Greece fighting against part of Greece for the rest of almost the whole rest of the chapter. So starting at verse 5 next week, the south versus the north is just talking about 4 different quadrants of Greece, and they fight against each other. We've never had the south and the north fight before, have we? All right. Here's going to be my takeaway. I can't tell you whether there's an angel in charge of the United States of America that Satan set up, or an angel in charge of that's fighting for God for America. But what I can tell you is God answers prayers, and when they're delayed, there may be a reason. But that doesn't mean He didn't hear. God always hears and answers our prayers. Prayers of a righteous man availeth much.